Hello fellow AFOLs and welcome to Long Bricks. Today we are taking a look at LEGO Marvel Set 76316 Fantastic Four vs. Galactus construction figure. It has 427 pieces and retails for $59.99. This is set to release on June 1st. I got lucky and found it early at my local Target, and it is of course based on the upcoming movie The Fantastic Four First Steps, which I believe is due out in July. I'm really excited for this one. It's the first time we're officially getting the Fantastic Four in LEGO, and we have this really nice buildable Galactus as well, which I think looks pretty cool. I have to admit, I am a little bummed. I was hoping that the Thing was going to be a big fig, but I think there's some reason they can't do that. So they kind of gave him these like large gloves, and I think the head looks pretty good. Like I think it's a normal head with a helmet piece. Of course, we'll take a look at all of that. It's as good as they could do if they can't do a big fig as far as I'm concerned. Also, you can see, you know, the Human Torch, Johnny Storm here, not fully flamed on, but he's got some flame effect pieces. Would have been cool to also get like a fully flamed on version. Maybe that'll be in a later set. I don't know if they're doing more than one set for this movie or not. For Reed, they gave him like some extendable leg pieces, which is kind of fun. So you can see it's the normal build, and then he's got these longer legs, and then Sue has some like force field pieces. I don't think LEGO really does translucent minifigs, but that would be something that would be really cool if they could do in a future set. But here is the front of the box. Not too much going on up top. Just shows you the 1-to-1 scale for Reed there. Not really anything going on the bottom. Over here on the side, pretty basic as well. Over here just says LEGO Marvel. On the back here, just kind of a street scene of them kind of, you know, battling Galactus here. They do have one of these clear pieces so you can attach Johnny to the back so it looks like he's flying around. I also think it's neat how there's like a stud on the feet. So you can actually attach a minifigure there, which should be pretty cool. So I'm going to go ahead, get this one opened, and we'll take a closer look. So right out of the box, you'll find 4 numbered bags, a fairly sizable sticker sheet, and the instructions. It looks like there's only about 11 stickers total, but they are some pretty large stickers, so hopefully it won't be too bad to apply. So here's the completed set. As you can see, it's pretty self-contained. There are plenty of places to attach all of the minifigures, but for now, I'm going to go ahead and just remove them, and we'll take a closer look at them later on. For Johnny, he does peg into this clear post that pegs into the back here. So if you want, you can just remove him and leave that in there, or if you don't like the look of that, you can easily pop this out and then just kind of leave that gray piece there. You can tilt it against the side. If you really don't like it, you can completely remove it. It just pops in, and then you would just kind of leave the back like that if you don't want that to be on there all the time. Otherwise, just pegs in pretty simply like that. But yeah, I think Galactus looks pretty good. The color scheme is well done. I think the head looks great. The face is actually fully printed, so that is not a sticker. Now, the rest of the things you see are stickers. Here on the chest, we'll get a little bit closer in there. That is one sticker. And then these pieces here for the skirt. But these are actually 3 individual stickers. I tried to line them up as best I could. I think I did a pretty decent job. They actually look good. Once they're fully applied, it almost kind of looks like a print, because that like purple is so vibrant. I think that really works out. And you can move these up and down. These can move up. This can move down. So if you need to get the full range of motion there with the hips, you can see it's one of these Technic pieces. You can kind of hear the ratchet there out to the side. Unfortunately, there's no thigh swivel. I would have liked there to be some kind of thigh swivel, but unfortunately not the case. You also have a ball joint down here for the knee, so you have a little bit of side-to-side movement there, but mostly up and down. And then you have this little knee pad that's on a hinge, so you can kind of move that in and out as needed. You have a ball joint down here for the foot. You can go about that far front to back, and you can tilt side to side pretty nicely. And you can see that there's a little connector there, so you can actually have one of the minifigures stand there on top of the foot. I don't really know why they decided to do the side of it in this kind of like reddish orange color instead of just doing the entire foot in the magenta, but that's what they went with. So it also has a connection here, so if you wanted to peg it onto another base or something, you could use that. But it's a pretty good range of motion there, and then you can just kind of move these down. You also have this cool little build with these like arrowhead pieces for the belt, and I think that looks kind of sharp. Very simple, just 3 of them connected on there. You do have a waist swivel. Now, it is technically a ball joint, but because it's so tight, there's not any kind of nab crunch, but you get a really nice swivel side to side. Here in the shoulders, you have these pieces. If for whatever reason, if you needed to move this up, now you can pretty much get the full range of motion without it. But if you wanted to move this out of the way, you could. I don't really think it adds much. I think it's really just a piece there to kind of hide the ball joint so it looks cohesive. But nice range of motion there out to the side and front to back. The way that the elbows are done, you do get a little bit of an elbow, but it's just one of those like 2x2 hinge pieces. So it's not a full ball joint or anything like that. But you can kind of get what you need from the ball joint up here at the shoulder. And then, like I said, you can bend that there. And then you have these individual fingers. And then you do have a ball joint at the wrist. So you can move that around, spin that as needed. And then you can see that there's a ball joint at the neck. Now, I will say I do feel like that ball joint is a little exposed. I don't know what they would have done, but I think it would have been nice if they could have built something across here to hide that a little bit better. It's not terrible. It's not super garish, but it just feels like it shouldn't be that exposed. But you do have a nice ball joint, so it might be so he can kind of look down, so there's not really like a piece in the way. He can look up. You can't really tilt side to side because of the way it's built. You can see, and I'll see if I can get this in here. Actually, I can probably just take it out. So you can see that there's this like orangish red piece here, and that kind of prevents him from tilting side to side. So connect that back in. But I do really like the printing there for the face. I think that works really well. And like I said, that is a print, that is not a sticker. For the antenna, you can kind of mess around with them a little bit. So if you kind of like it in a little bit more, if you kind of want it straight out, whatever you prefer in terms of, you know, how you want to pose this. I think, like, if we push these all the way in and then these like that, I can't remember exactly what angle they're supposed to be at, but you have some customization there, so you can play with that a little bit. And then you can see the top is kind of flat, and it looks pretty good from the back. There's a little bit in terms of that reddish-orange color, reddish-brown on the back. But overall, I think they did a pretty good job. And if you want to kind of like have him in more of a squat pose, you can certainly do something like that and then just kind of move those skirt pieces. I don't like the look of the skirt pieces so far out to the side. I almost kind of wish these were on ball joints too, so that I could kind of bring them a little forward and still have them over the leg. But if you bring the legs forward there to have them kind of crouching, unfortunately they're going to pop out to the side like that. So, but yeah, overall, I think he works pretty well. I think it's a decent Galactus. In terms of scale, obviously, he should be much larger. I think in the trailer we see that like one of his boots is like 2-story tall next to a building. And they couldn't do that because if they made it to that kind of a scale, you know, one of his legs would be the size of the entire figure and the set would be astronomically expensive. So I think for what they could do in terms of price, you know, keeping it reasonable, I think it's a pretty good brick-built Galactus. Now, he's probably about, I don't have an Ant-Man or any giant man like that to put handy to compare him size-wise, but I would say he's probably slightly taller than like the brick-built Ant-Mans we've gotten recently. So, you know, that kind of doesn't make sense in universe, but again, trying to keep this at a reasonable scale, I think he came out pretty good. I think he does look sharp. I really like the color scheme, and I think the stickers even came out pretty good in terms of not super looking like stickers. Like the blue of the sticker blends in well to the blue of the plastic, and then that magenta just really pops. So your eyes are kind of drawn to that, even if you could kind of see where the stickers meet the plastic. Because that magenta is so bright, it kind of draws your eye and you don't really notice the rest of it. But yeah, he's a good brick-built figure. I like him quite a bit. Up first for our minifigures, we have Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic. And I think they did a nice job with the printing, you know, on the chest here, the Fantastic Four logo. They do have very basic uniforms with the blue and the white. I think it's a great shade of blue. It's a little bit lighter than it's coming up on camera, but I do think it's a really nice shade of blue, and the white really pops. Now, they decided to give him these like longer leg pieces here to kind of convey his stretching ability. What I think is interesting is they decided to give him white boots, but without stretching, when you take this off, he doesn't have white boots on the actual minifigure feet. So that part of it kind of doesn't make sense. I almost kind of wish that these were made of the same color blue as the rest. And not that I don't like it aesthetically, it just doesn't make sense because when he's stretching his legs, suddenly he's getting white boots, and that part of it doesn't really make sense. I also wish they included some kind of piece to make it look like he's stretching his arms. I think that would have been a lot of fun. But unfortunately, we just kind of get these brick-built stretched legs on the back here. Pretty basic printing there for the back. Honestly, I would have loved dual molded feet for all 4 of these with the blue and the white, and then it would have made sense. But again, I don't know what it looks like in the movie. Maybe they don't have that in the movie, so I can understand. But I would have personally loved the look of that. And then taking a closer look here without the stretchy legs, you can see the expression on the face I think is pretty good. And he does have a second face where he's kind of winking. Honestly, the 2 expressions are not really that different. And I was kind of surprised that he has black hair instead of brown, because I feel like Mr. Fantastic has black hair. And if I put the hair back on, I'm sorry, he should have brown hair, not black hair is what I meant to say. And also he should have those white stripes on the side. Again, maybe it's something they're foregoing for the movie. I have to look at it again. But that's always been kind of a core design for Mr. Fantastic, where he has those white stripes on the side of the hair, and that's something they don't have here. So again, maybe it's movie accurate. I'll have to double check, but I still wish it was kind of there, and I do kind of wish they had dual molded legs. Up next, we have Susan Storm, aka the Invisible Woman. And I think I mentioned earlier that it would have been really neat to do something here with a translucent minifigure, but I don't really think that's something that LEGO gets into, so I guess I understand. But again, you have a pretty basic suit there, but I think it looks pretty good. You have that extra little bit of white printing there around the collar. And she has these 2 translucent pieces here to kind of simulate her force fields, which I think they did a pretty good job with. So overall, I think that looks pretty good. And then taking a closer look without the hairpiece and the accessories. Again, pretty basic printing there for the chest, as well as here on the back. And then you can see she has kind of a softer expression there as the second face. This is kind of her, like, you know, in battle, angry face. And then she has kind of a softer expression there. Both expressions, I think, are perfectly fine. Overall, pretty excellent minifigure. Up next, we have Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch. And you can see here that he's got kind of these flame effects. They just have these 2 flame pieces connecting to this kind of orange 1x2 rounded off piece. And then he has those, we've seen these effects for Iron Man, for Spider-Man. They're done here in translucent orange to simulate the flame effect. We'll take a closer look at the back printing and everything once I take it off the effect pieces, but I wanted to show off at least at first. I do wish they had a fully flamed on version so that he was done in orange. But this is nice. Maybe in a future set we'll get something like that. But overall, you know, they've given us a few pieces here for the flame effects, but I would have liked a fully flamed out Human Torch. Taking a closer look without the flame effects, I believe the chest printing is exactly the same as Susan's, but still, you know, looks good. Has that little extra bit of white around the collar there, and then the back, of course, is exactly the same. So I think they're using the same torso for both Susan and Johnny, you know, which makes sense. They're pretty basic uniforms. I do like the hairpiece. I think that works really well. I don't know if that's brand new or not, but I do like it in this color. And then if we go ahead and remove that, we can see he's got kind of a smirking expression, and then for the second expression, he's got kind of a terrified expression, which I think is kind of funny. I think that's a great second expression. They're not always, you know, it's nice to have 2 completely different expressions. The juxtaposition is nice without having, like, Reed's kind of like a smile and a smirk. This is, you know, got a terrified face and then a smirking face, and I think that's pretty great that they have 2 very unique expressions there. And lastly, we have Ben Grimm, the Thing. Once again, using the same torso piece as Susan and Johnny, so there's not really anything new to look at there. But I do really like the headpiece we have for the Thing. You know, I think they did a nice job with that. Nice rocky look to the helmet. They've also given him the accentuated brow, which I think works. It's a little weird when paired with the normal Lego minifigure head just because it's so much bigger. I'm not a huge fan of the way they've done the hands just because they just look so disconnected from the rest of the body. This piece is fine. We've seen it before. But, you know, and the color matches the headpiece, so I'll give them that. I think they did a nice job keeping that color consistent. But it feels like he's wearing gloves. It doesn't feel like his own Thing hands, and so that's a bit of a bummer there. I really would have loved this to be a big fig. I heard somewhere online that there's some reason that they can't, like the design that was used with the video game they don't own, and so therefore they can't do it as a big fig. I don't know if that's true or not. But yeah, I guess this is as good as it could be if it had to be a normal size minifigure, but I would really love to see in the future a big fig thing. Try to say that 5 times fast. So he could be around the same size as the Hulk and really rival the Hulk. I think that would be really fun. So I am a bit bummed about that, but I guess he's about as good as he could be if he has to be a normal size minifigure. As much as I do like the helmet, I actually kind of really like the printing on the minifigure head. They still kept the giant eyebrows, which I think is a really nice touch. On the back here, he's got kind of a second kind of smug expression. I think both of those look pretty good. He does just have the normal white hands, the gloves like everybody else does. So, like I said, I appreciate that they couldn't make him a big fig, and I think he looks fine, but it is still really a bummer. I feel like he really should have been. So I really like the set a lot. It's definitely not perfect, but I think it's pretty close. I mean, there are definitely a few things that I would change. I would love to have the side skirts especially be on some kind of ball joint so that I could move them forward or back to contour with whatever position I have the legs in. The front and back skirts, I'm fine with the way they are. I don't have any issue with those. I would also have loved for them to build in some kind of thigh swivel, however they would achieve that, just because I think that would really help with some of the stances and things like that. I also, like, they incorporated this kind of brownish red color a couple places, and I don't really know why that's needed. I feel like those pieces could have just been magenta, and that probably would have just blended in a little bit better. I do really appreciate the printing for the face. I'm really happy that that's not a sticker, and I feel like the stickers for the skirt pieces actually came out pretty good, to the fact that, you know, when I look at them, they don't immediately look like stickers to me. They look like they could be printed, so I think that they came out pretty good. So yeah, Galactus I'm pretty happy with. The 4 Fantastic Four minifigures, they're not bad, but given the fact that they're all wearing almost identical suits, I feel like they could have sprung for the dual molded legs. I went back and checked and I found this picture where they do absolutely have the white boots, and so I feel like because they didn't have to do unique prints for all of their chests, they could have sprung for the dual molded legs for the feet. I think that would have been really nice to give them all the dual molded legs with the white boots. They did kind of incorporate, you know, the white for the boots down there with his stretch legs, but it looks weird because they don't have them. I guess either way, it kind of wouldn't work, because if you do it the way it is, now he's got white boots, but the leg looks seamless and he has the white boots. If they had done the dual molded legs, then it would look like he's got 2 boots on, so I can understand why. But they could have thrown in an extra pair of blue legs and a dual molded leg, so that way when he's not stretched, he could have the dual molded legs, and then when he is, you could use the full blue set of legs. That would have, above and beyond. I can understand why they didn't do that, but that would have been perfect. And then just the fact that the thing isn't a big fig is kind of a bummer. Again, I don't know if there's some kind of legal issue why they couldn't do it, but I really, really would have liked him to be a big fig. What they gave us is fine and probably the best they could do, and I think the helmet looks good, and I think the face printing looks good, but those big hands just look a little out of place. They just don't quite work, in my opinion. Sue looks great. Johnny looks great. Sure, I would have liked him to be, you know, fully inflamed, as weird as that sounds, but for what we got, I'm not unhappy with it. You know, like I said, maybe we can get a full Human Torch later on down the line or something like that. So I'm not unhappy with the minifigures, but of course they could be better. And the other thing to really consider is the price of this set being $60. I feel like the Galactus is pretty solid. There's a decent amount of pieces there. It's a pretty solid build. I could easily see him being $30, $35 maybe. And then if you think about the 4 minifigures kind of being $15 in value. Now, if Thing was a big fig and they had sprung for the dual molded legs, all day. 30 for Galactus, 30 for the minifigures. I would have felt like that's fine, and I would think the value's there. But I feel like if someone were to guess the price of this set, they probably would say somewhere between 40 and 50. If this was 50, I would have been like, makes total sense. I think the value's there. So it's a little overpriced in my opinion. Not terribly, but you know, if you want to wait for the usual 20% off and then you're going to get this thing for 48, I think that'd be a sweet spot, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. So I like what's here. The minifigures could be better, of course, but I don't think you'll be hugely disappointed if you decide to pick this one up. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as always, thank you so much for watching.